Namaskaram. Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskaram.
This is Kural Exclusive, Episode 1, with renowned Carnatic musician Vidwan Sri Palghat Ramprasad. Kural Exclusive deals with questions that are less discussed in the field of Carnatic music. First of all, we would like to thank all of you who have participated in this discussion by submitting your questions to us. So, in this first episode of Kural Exclusive, we will be dealing with the topic Carnatic Music Education in Current Times. The interview consists of two parts. The first part will consist mostly of questions from our side, that is Kural's side, which we thought were worth discussing. And the second part will consist of more specific questions from the audience. So let's dive right into the interview. Question 1.
This is like a really broad question. So if I have to split it up into four or five parts, the first question is, what is the objective of even learning? It starts from there. Is it because my neighbor's kids learn and therefore I want my kids to learn music? Or is it something like I was deprived as a child and therefore I don't want to get that to my kids, so they have to get exposed? Or is it something like my family is interested in music, so perhaps my child at a later point in time doesn't want to think the way I'm thinking now, and therefore he or she gets initiated? Or there is some history of music in my family and I just want to harness that the way it is possible. So the first question is to even identify, even before choosing the guru, what am I in for and why am I in for? So that would be the first part. So if this is finalized, right, the next part is, what is the interest of the child? Is the child really interested? Maybe at 6 or 7, a child might not know whether he or she is interested. So it's like a tussle, right? The parents say something, like for learning anything, they try to induce them to music and try to get the sense of whether they like it or not, whether there's a natural inclination. And you have examples for all. Let's be very clear about that. So if you take the first 4 combinations and combine this with the several combinations that I am giving, you will have examples for all. You will have success stories. By success, I mean desirable outcomes versus non-desirable outcomes for the parents as well as the kids. So what I am saying doesn't mean that some person has to choose this set or this subset, right? I'm just giving you a broad idea. It is just to place yourself and your kid in that specific mode and try to see what best you can achieve from that. So it's just an efficiency matrix. That's all I will say, right? So the next part, as I said before, was assessing how interested the kid is. So as for anything, the first 2 classes will be exciting for any kid, for any parent, for any guru, for anyone. So only once the grinding starts, you will know what is the mental toughness and the natural inclination of the kid is. So that is the stage where people have to really start assessing. So that's when, as a parent, I will think, oh man, you know what, I'm just missing this call for a day. Or shall I just ask my wife to do it? Or the wife might think the other way around. So that is the first step of saying that, you know what, okay, so the graph is not going up. Perhaps it's starting to solidify at a plateau. Ideally, beyond a point, there should be no external force for the kid to take off from a specific point. That is a point of inflection. That could be 2 weeks, that could be 2 months, that could be 2 years, that could be 20 years, that may not even happen. Nobody has. I mean, the whole point is the unknowns in Carnatic music is like so huge. So it is all trial and error, unfortunately. We are just trying to force the system into place by creating an artificial, mold and trying to see where we fit. The next part, once you have identified, is to understand whether you are learning something for the sake of learning, or whether you as a parent or if the child is young enough, you want as a parent for the kid to take this more seriously in terms of taking to a concept level. That is the next stage. Now, once you have decided on this, is when you actually start scouting for a guru. Typically, what happens is randomly people come attend a concert. They take away the vanity value of it. Okay, so post the concert, they just hear the thunders of applause. They see flocks of people taking selfies with them. You see a lot of people. I mean, you see the artists get some kind of a highlight of the importance after the concert, and they think, why not for my kid? Or the kid thinks, if the kid thinks why not for me, I wouldn't blame much, right? If the parents think, if for vanity music is driven, I'm not too sure how. Maybe there is an example to it. I haven't come across an example like that. A vanity which initiates a person into music, and from there on the interest naturally develops and moves on. I don't know. Maybe there is an example because Carnatic music is so huge. Just because I'm not aware of it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Perhaps it's very common. I don't know. But in my books, this hasn't happened. Now, once I know for a fact that I want my kid to take it pretty seriously, let's take that route. Because that is the more intense and the more rigorous part. Firstly, there are so many teachers and gurus who say that you should not be thinking of a concert. As a performer and as a teacher, if I'm saying that, it is totally oxymoronic, right? Just because I didn't have an idea, by me, I don't mean exactly me, as any teacher for that. He or she might not have an idea to have been a performer. By chance it might have happened. But right now you're a performer, right?
Yeah.
So which means you have to only make it possible for the kid and give the pros and cons of what it takes to be a performer. So in my opinion, if some kid comes and tells me that, you know what, I want to become a performer, my next question is, are you willing to do anything for it? If the answer is yes, I feel it's a very justified, a line of thinking where you want to be someone, right? Just take the same case. I mean, do you think most kids who go for a cricket coach, they don't want to be a part of Indian team? Would any kid say that, you know what, I want to master the art of cover drive like waterfall drive? No, I mean, hardly you come across something like this.
Yeah.
I haven't heard. So I don't feel in principle there is anything wrong for a kid or a parent to ask for their kids to be performing artists and therefore learn music. Because anyways, unless the teacher is business-minded, a genuine teacher would basically teach music. And if it takes enough for that student to become a performer, why not? Right? So that is the next thing. So I took this route of being a performer. If it is for entertainment, if you want to learn music, like the way you fly kites, like the way you just get drenched in rain, then I would say you have to be very clear on how you use a teacher's time. Are you using a performer's time for teaching? Because the alternate use is much higher. There could be somebody who is like really aspiring. So the marginal value of teaching that kid is typically higher. The value is higher. So I would be in a wrong foot just for the entertainment's sake if I see that some ex-guru is very popular and therefore I get this tag of learning under Mr. or Mrs. X. That gives me this kind of sense of achievement and therefore I learn. I don't know what's the aim. And unfortunately, a lot of times this happens. Like you want to call yourself under the school or as a disciple of a known artist, but you don't have a goal for music outside of the fact that you are under the tutelage of this person. So that is the way I would think of this entire matrix. Now, here, we are talking about the system message, right? So, you have talked about the demand part from the parent side. There are several kinds of teachers, right? So, I, as a teacher, I am extremely strict and I have lots of conditions, I have a lot of expectations, there are so many teachers who might be as effective or even more effective than me, but who might not have so many constraints. They might be perfectly okay with the kid, having a cup of ice cream and coming to class. And maybe the kids sing well, maybe the teachers teach them really well, maybe there's a great marriage and they become great artists. I don't know. I'm saying these are all possibilities. So now it depends what kind of teacher you have gone to, right? If someone were to come to me who did not have a background, that's what your question was, right? Who did not have a background, who have come to me for a non-vanity purpose. Let's say they listen to my Kedara Gowda and for God's sake they liked it and they say that, what, if my kid sings Kedara Gowda, probably this is how it would be great. Yeah. So let's say such parents come to me. The first thing I tell them, I just give them a set of, there is a boilerplate that I've created, which I send out. By me, it's not me, one of my students. I don't take in any students anymore. So, for beginners, my students teach. So, there is a set of expectations, like the kind of songs that is taught in the school, which is typically old school, which means the rigor is even more. Which means, if you are going to learn from a different teacher, you might learn more in terms of quantity. If you come into this school, you might not. Forget the upshoots. Because obviously, if somebody doesn't find value, they are not even going to find you.
Yeah.
So it's more important to give the negatives, right? So I set all these expectations clear, and I also tell them very clearly. See, there are two ways. One is the organic way of teaching, wherein you start with Sarali Varase, Jenta Varase, Jata, and all these things. I didn't learn it that way. So first of all, I can't even claim to say that that's the way or that's not the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't learn it that way. So it depends on the student. So some students, they get the Swarasthanas straight, right? So it will teach them simple kirtanas with less gamakams. If they are able to get a hold of it, then perhaps I will start it there. If they don't have an idea, then probably Varasais do help. So I would say the greatness of our music is the way it can accommodate so many people from different diverse backgrounds, and the choices that teachers have that they can employ to ensure that this art form gets passed the way that we learn. Because we don't know what is the right way. We don't even know what the right music is. Who is to claim what is right music? Who is to claim what is the right, authentic way of Endaru Mahanubhavulu? Can you say that? Unless Tyagaraja himself comes and says that this is what it is. Nobody knows. So the way we learn music is that we have absolute faith from the person that we learn from. So the only justice that we can do as teacher is the way that we can pass it as much as possible without diluting it. Right? Obviously, with time passage, a lot of things change. So there is only so much that you can compromise on. There is not a lot that you should be willing to compromise on as a teacher. So that is the thing. So if somebody comes like this, I will perhaps give them the overall rubric and say that this is not easy stuff. This is like taking an advanced calculus class, or even for the long run. Is the interest to learn. That's all. The enthusiasm to learn, and what are you willing to give up for this? See, because students are different. For some, you just teach them a complicated symphony, they get it once. For someone else, it may take classes together. Maybe the person who got it so fast might lose it the same way. The person who took so long would retain it for so long. Again, there are so many cases, right? So the point is not about the conditions for output. I would say it's all about the conditions for input. Like, how much am I willing to sacrifice? How much am I willing to compromise? How much am I making music my priority? Right? If that is there, then I see no point why one cannot teach music to someone or someone might not get music. So that's my point. See, there are several ways, right? You just think of a simple kid. Like, this is 3 off of Mr. Chapel. A person who might have natural inclination to learn might not find it hard to take 3 off. He or she might be a beginner. She would be exactly on track. Right? But for someone who might not have the natural, inclination of the beat or the tempo in mind, then it's important to probably tell them what is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and make them tell this for like as long as possible until they get the idea of this 14, right? 6, 4, 4, 6, 4, 4, 6, 4, 4, 6, 4, 4. And then you will say 1, 2, 3, karu, na, ga, na, ga, 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 ni, di, ye, ga, ga, ga. So until it gets really imbibed in them that the Karunanidhi is of this metric, right? So that way, the concept of laya is actually intertwined in all the songs, most of the songs that we know. Right? So, take a Hamara, right? Or just take a Visalakshi, or just take a Janani. Whichever way you take, there will be, I don't have to tell you this, it's just an integral part of it. So, the concept of layam as a specific case, like a case in point comes in, wherein you are looking to be kacheri ready, right? And you are trying to insert certain laya patterns in your swara. For example, I am saying that Nida Pama Gari Sada Nanda. Okay, wait a second. Nida Pama Gari Sada. Maybe I didn't calculate this. Maybe there is a way to calculate it. Right? So, as a teacher, what comes to me naturally as a performer makes me think what is the best way to get this outfit to this guy. And that might be different for you as a student versus for him as a student versus her as a student. So this is going to be different. So that's where the challenge is. You might think as a teacher, oh, what's there? It's just 3 off and it's just 1 before the Zaki. That's it. No, it is not. It is not. Because you are looking at from your perspective of 3 and 1. Right? The 3s and 1s in the student's mind is very different. Right? So I know that I haven't straightforwardly answered your question, but the concept is it depends on what is the natural endowment of the student with respect to the laya aspect, for the matter any aspect, so that I can build upon it. So a good teacher has to be good enough to assess those things right at the beginning. Some students have a natural throat and natural vocal hygiene. Right? See, a simple example. This is a normal akara. I can abuse my voice to get the same sound. It's a sharaga.
Yeah.
Right? Now I give you a set of choice. Right? I have heard several people sing several more styles. Right? The question is, as a teacher, I should know what the mix of nasal, non-nasal, the force with which you operate, the openness with which you operate will work or will be hurtful for the student. So this takes quite a bit of time. So that gets back to our basics of teaching, wherein in old school teaching they say, if you get trained into one school, you stick to it for quite a number of years. The reason is because I know that I am slightly off, but again this might potentially answer several of your more questions. I'm just making this a case in point to address this specific thing. So for example, we know that India has a certain way of singing in terms of vocalization. Kevin has a certain style. All of the brothers have a certain style. Madhur Mani Iyer has a certain style. So all of them have all components, but in different ratios. The nasality might be much higher in a Shamguri school, right? The akaram could be much higher in a Kevin style. The kala pramana, the madhyama kala pramana could be much higher in Ramanjita style, right? Though they both belong to the same school, they have carved out their own niches, right, in terms of styles. So this kind of variety of paths makes it easier for both the student and the teacher to figure out at a specific point in time, which that specific point in time is quite a bit. It's not the first class, right? The first class I might have a general idea, I may not have a specific idea, right? I might have a general idea of where I can potentially place you. I mean, in the spectrum, am I placing you here or here or here is what I can tell you, but not exactly what path I will be putting you under. So that path, for us to be identified, for us, I mean both the teacher and the student, It will take certain, because again, as I said, there is no guarantee that if I teach someone a certain way, it's the right way. Right? So the same Jnana Mosakarata that I may teach to one of my students, I may ask that person to use a bit more Meza against Sada, Bada. For someone else, it may be different. For a female voice, it might be different. For a male voice, it might be different. For an adolescent voice, it might be different. For those who perform concerts, it might be different. For those who are regularly performing, I would say that, okay, this is a strain to your voice, take the weight off. For a person who sporadically performs, I would say that give that weight, that will give you more effect. Right? It's just one Sangha that I'm talking about. Jnana Mosakarata, that's all. So, why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because if you are looking at voice culture is not something which is in unison. Okay? It encompasses so many different things. The way, several people, still, even professionals sing, Sesha Chalanayakam, doesn't come in entirely. Right? So, if that can be a case for even professionals, if they teach, perhaps they are not aware that they are singing Nayakam, not Nayakam. So that's what will get passed on to them. So as a teacher, I would first say for example, if I'm teaching female students whose study is like G or G sharp, and my study is C sharp, right? So when I teach them in their study, I teach them only in their study. So when I sing, let's say, at 5, I have to force my voice so that they get heard.
Yeah.
Right? So I tell them, I can sing this way, but you cannot sing this way. So as a teacher, my responsibility first should be what you should not be doing and what I am doing. For that, the teacher should be extremely aware of the voice culture.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Carnatic music, I wouldn't think, I'm a bit afraid of saying this, I wouldn't think that many people are aware of their vocalization techniques. And many people care enough until they get into an issue. That is when they first start thinking about, oh, is there something called voice culture? Right? But in my opinion, this as a teacher, as a performer, and coming from a family wherein my tata has discussed this extensively, if you listen to the style of Ramanujana's singing, in my opinion, I do a lot of practical and theoretical research on vocalization and vocal techniques and all that stuff. The most natural way that a voice can produce sound, which is singing, the most natural way would be really close to how Ramanujana sings. Right? And people can ask, how do you know? This is just based on my observation. If I'm wrong, please tell me what else you feel and the reason for it. I'm so happy to take it. Because at the end of it, if somebody proves me wrong and if some person is able to give me a better solution, I will follow that. Because at the end of it, all musicians want to have a really good voice, right? Yeah. So this, to this point in time in my life, has worked. Because this has been my observation and this has worked, and by God's grace it has worked for my students too. So that kind of style of vocalization, even if you have a cold or a cough or a fever or whatever, that style of vocalization basically isolates your physical strain from vocal production. So regardless of your physical capabilities and incapabilities, you will not show out much when you sing that you have a problem.
Could you give an example?
Sure. A simple example would be, I'll just give you a microcosmic example. You have to apply this to the entire song, therefore to all the songs that you know, therefore to all the manodharmams, and therefore to all the octaves, and therefore to all kinds of manodharmams. Yeah. So, see, let's take a simple example. Since I started with Parali. Okay. Now, both my nostrils are blocked.
Yeah.
Both are blocked.
Yeah.
I would assume that if you listen to any of my past singing of the same Sangani in any concert, probably might not know the difference. The reason is because dari sari Sa, sa. How much is that sa, sa? Is that sa, sa or sa, 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 sa? How much is that intonation? This is the split, right?
Yeah.
So you get into the mechanics of it. You just put like a 15 million magnifying lens, okay? Microscope, yeah, exactly. To see where the waves go.
Yeah.
Like how you see it in a computer, right? In all your macro and all that stuff. If you're able to visualize that, you will understand that my nostrils are blocked. Might be by the end of this interview, probably I just sing the same song you remind me. Okay? Okay, so I had to use a bit more of nasal while ending. Because I know the contours of the sangadi that I am singing. And I know how much of pressure to apply where. Probably if my nostrils were not blocked, the way I would have handled the sangadi is
Okay.
But now this is not efficient. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It is not efficient. Right? So to pick the most efficient way of singing, therefore you're able to preserve the voice, is the perfect example of how you can conserve your voice. Especially when you have concerts, one after the other. As a vocalist, your prime duty is to ensure that you keep your voice intact.
But so two questions from this spinning off. One is, what is the role of the bigu sigu and the bigu sugu? Malinam melinam சொல்ற அந்த stress points, to show the feeling or bhava or whatever. That is one. And the second part is that ஒரு ஆலாபன பாடும்போது you might get some sangati which you have never sung before or don't have a memory of having sung. And the time, does it become muscle memory for your voice in order to produce it, or do you consciously make the decision of where to use your nasal or your